Hello world! Patricia O'Connor and Frida, Reba, Darcy here. Today on the bonsai balcony. Oh my goodness. It's a beautiful day in Alameda. Everybody in Alameda gets one beautiful day today. That's free of charge. One beautiful day. Sky is just absolutely a beautiful shade of blue. Wind's calm. Nice little low breeze. Air is cool. Maybe 65, 70. I just can't go on about how nice this is. So what are we going to do on a day like today? How about an update? How about we just kind of go tree to tree and see what's going on? And in a way, this is just a reflection of how good I think we have it. Look at those. You know, I've showed y'all several times my wisterias that I had blooming, but along with those wisterias, I had in bonsai pots, I had some more wisterias that were just getting shoved from pot to pot as the idea to plant them along the rail down there got nixed. So those guys are loving the lights, and just a little quick look at those. I never show y'all those, but that's about 3 clumps of wisteria every other year or so. I'll go down there and look and see if there's something I want. I don't, they can just be wisteria. Maybe at some point I'll turn around and go, wow, that was the bonsai I was growing. Anyway, we're going to start here with our maple. This is our trident maple. We put that big old Pete Mossberger on there a week ago. That was our Saturday Night Live program. And it is just sitting back doing its thing. And so are we. It seems to breathe, it seems to be resting comfortably, I would say. And it got watered a little while ago. It looks like it could use watering. I don't know. But I waited until late today to water because I enjoyed watching everything dry out. I usually come in through here just before I go to work, and that's sometimes watering based on how much I think it will need later, not on how much it needs then. So on days when I'm here, it's kind of nice to hold back and let everything just get that little bit greener, that little bit, So we did that graft on this guy. We cut our bark loose right in there, and I'm hoping to get some roots coming out of here. And so far, so good. We don't see anything happening, but it's a little early to be seeing anything happen yet. Next to that, this is the 78-year-old Japanese cork bark black pine. And it's doing well. Its color's good. It's just hanging out. It's not really messing with me. I'm not messing with it. It's sort of, I had a little issue with it a couple of years ago, and I've considered it in recovery mode ever since. So I've just kind of got it. It's in recovery mode. It is, and it seems to be, I would say it's responding pretty well to, and by recovery mode, I just mean I'm not doing the candles. I'm not doing a lot of reduction on this tree as of yet, and I'm feeding it. So we're just kind of giving it a little time off there. I think it's happier, and it's recovering nicely. And by recovery mode, I had an issue a couple of years ago with this tree where I made a mistake and nearly lost it. I caused a blockage down here in the bottom of the pot that nearly took us out. Next is our Yamadori ponderosa. This tree has been in our collection now for less than a year. And there's a lot of good stuff. There's a lot of cool stuff about this tree. We got it, we styled it some. We brought the branches from up high down to low. And then I decided to overwinter it upstate at a part of at another garden that has a colder winter than we do, which would benefit the tree when it's in a winter climate that's actually a little too warm for it. That'll cause them to kind of run down, from what I'm being told. So we decided to do that, and the tree overwintered in Auburn, California this past winter. And before we picked it up, we had Japanese black pine grafted to it, so that if our grafts take, we'll start a process on this tree by which it will start becoming more and more and more Japanese black pine and less ponderosa foliage, which will mean it will be acclimated to my Bay Area much better, and I won't have to worry about that. Also, I won't have to worry. I will change the method for shortening the needles on that. Will go from a single flush method to a multi-flush method, which I think is cool. It's neither here nor there, but I think it's cool. In this case, we would be able to start off with smaller needles. So all of that really brightly colored tape that you see on there, that's what those are. Those are black pine grafts that have been covered with those little pieces of tape, making little tents around them to keep them out of the wind a little bit and to keep them from getting overly cooked. And next month, I'm supposed to open up all of those and vent. I think I'll double check it, but I believe what I was told was I'm supposed to vent those little plastic film buds that are wrapped up. I will go through there and vent those a little, make sure that they're happy and not cooking inside there. So nothing yet to do on this until June. Wow, it's got little pollen cones and everything. We're just putting out. Ooh, go. So I love this tree, and look at that bark. Didn't you just have bark for days? Next on our thing would be our 20-year from seed Japanese black pine. This guy is just stroking right along. It has another almost 30 days. About this time next month, I'll go through and pick up all of its fertilizer. And then 30 days after that, we will go through and decandle this guy. And then that takes us to Simply Pea. Simply Pea is pushing out a lot of new growth. And last year's growth just kind of, or maybe that was third year needles. And anyway, that growth is starting to look a little yellow. But this year's growth is pushing out very vigorously. And we're not going to do anything to Simply Pea this year. I'm not going to do the candles on that. It had a really big year last year, and we're just going to let it push out stuff and do cool stuff. We changed its orientation a lot. We made that mound of moss for its roots to grow in and raised it up and changed its angle and cut half of its trunk off. So right now, we're in feed it and don't fret it mode, and it will stay in feed it and don't fret it mode for a minute. I gave that after all of that stuff. I also gave it a prune last year when I shouldn't have done that. And it's just now starting to kind of let me off the hook a little for that. So we're just like, yeah, okay, we're just gonna water and feed you for another year or so and let you do. But I'm really happy with. Another thing that I did was I started establishing a little shari over here. I could turn it around and show you better, perhaps, maybe. Anyway, that's Simply Pea, and this started off as a box tree. It started off as a box tree from Brussels, and it was standing up, and it was shaped. Its trunk was shaped like a goalpost. I kid you not. In the past couple of weeks, no, past couple of months, we have potted up these two ponderosas, and more recently this one, and I think it came out. We haven't really done a whole lot of follow up on that little ponderosa, but I would say it's doing very well, and it looks really good in that little pot. That's one of Elizabeth Crutenden's pots, and those just go together real well. I'm waiting for that trunk to fatten up more, and it looks like it's just starting to get really busy with it. I have a choice to make as to whether or not to continue all of this pretzel logic or cut it back, but we don't have to make any decisions on that right this minute. And then also this little unglazed pot with an upright. This is the one ponderosa out of the 10 that I ordered last summer. That is our formal upright. I didn't do a thing to it. As you can see, I actually put a wire on it so that I could straighten it out more. Yep, that's what I said. And then that's got us this little canyon tree. That little canyon tree, it's Japanese black pine, and it was one of those that we got last year, and we got it in a cube, and then right after that we started wiring those into circus shapes. And that little tree was not probably one of the best ones that I did. I don't think it's bad. I mean, I like this little tree. I'm not kicking it out of bed or knocking it or anything. I think it's a pretty nice little tree. But some of its bends were a little more angular than I wanted, and some of them came out more graceful, and some of them just do great stuff. But this tree is getting better as it goes. I think I should probably go through there and release some of that wire on there, because it's another one that's been just wired and wired and wired. I went through and wired the tree and folded it up, and then whenever I wanted to adjust the planting angle, it didn't want to stay there, so I made a staple out of wire and stapled the whole mass down, so you can see where it's got a lot of extra metal in there. And I could probably go in and clean up these candles too. It's a pretty little tree, but also in a little while we will be going through and doing the candles on that. So there is a lot to be said for just kind of feeding it and leaving it alone for the minute. There's I don't think shortening those really long needles is going to do, that would make it look a little neater and stuff, but that wouldn't really help the tree. All right, from there I'm going to just jump right up to our to our coastal oak. This is like I feel like this is a success story. This tree, it started suffering some sort of blight 2 years ago that really had me on the ropes. I was taking a saw to limbs that were like that big around and cutting off black parts of them, and then the next day I would have to cut that back again even more, and I found that to be pretty disturbing. This tree had a shape that was, to my way of, was show worthy, was absolutely show worthy. When I got the tree, I bought a show worthy tree, and then a couple of years later, we had a bad little thing happen to this guy. So what I've been doing is I cut it back, not based on design, but based on what was dying, and then took what it gave us when it finally stopped that. Oh, and I ran a systemic through the tree. Now, it might have been that its ailment had run its course, because my running the systemic through the tree wasn't automatic. I did take a minute to panic first, and then I, started binge watching things, probably oak related, until I started learning more about systemic treatments and stuff. So in the end, about the time we started in with the systemic, we started seeing some turnaround. But I would say that it was probably due to our taking measures, because it was sure kicking that tree's butt. But what you see now is a tree that is flushing out so much that it's really hard to see that there's a beautiful oak tree in there, but there is. And let's get in there and look at that guy. You can see it's got a little hollow feature. Our trunk, underneath all of this little brush and stuff, is getting really, really fat. My plan is to have more discipline this year with this tree than I've had in years past. I start seeing it like this, and like a mom wanting to comb that hair out of those eyes, I kind of want to go in here and start cleaning this up a little. But this is the tree doing what it needs to do. It's making choices. It's deciding that it has enough to continue, and adding a lot more, showing us that it's in really good positive energy. And all of this lumpy stuff that we cut back are starting to heal, and all of our cuts are starting to vibricate off. We're starting to see some singles and some secondary and some tertiary and all that good stuff. So everything about this tree is a positive. Last year, I was looking at it and pruning stuff back because it was early enough in the year. I'm going, all that's going to elongate out, and by the time I'm able to do something with it, it'll be too big at the base and may not have enough leaves. So I trimmed everything last year and was able to get a second flush out of it. This year I've said, do not do that. Let this go all the way. Let this go. Let all those things just go as long as they're going to go this year. And the tree's an evergreen, so it's not like when the leaves fall off, I'm going to go through and do something. But in the fall, we will kind of treat it in the same way. In the fall, we'll go back through and we'll start making our choices and start trimming everything back. Some of the this year we also decided that we would let some things slide, like our up branches and our straight down branches, because what we're still trying to do is fill in all those gaps, and just fill in all those gaps with leaves and limbs and twigs and all that stuff. And all of that stuff equates to more foliage, and all that foliage equates to more photosynthesis, and all that photosynthesis equates to more root mass, and that just keeps, let's just keep that conveyor belt rolling and getting it going as fast as we can, and that will get us back to a nice sized tree. So choices that I've made about this tree. This past year I decided that, I don't know how well I'm showing you these, the thing that I'm wiggling now, I'll probably keep that. We're going to allow a little bit of branch structure to come a little farther down here. This stuff down here and all of this stuff down here, this is just fattening up our trunk. I'll get rid of that. I probably won't even let that go all year. I need to be able to see the tree at some point. But right now that is fattening up the trunk, and why would I stop that? So that's, whereas that'll go, this piece down here and another one like it on the other side, we want to bring our design, I think, a little farther down. Okay, from there I will go peanuts. I don't know if you can see that crow, it's down there. From there we'll go forward to our foreground. excuse me, our bald cypress. Oh, our bald cypress. These guys have been an ongoing project almost from the very start. I started thinking about bonsai and in something way that's very much like me. Whenever I get hooked to something, I start thinking about what would the extreme of that look like. And I think at the time I posted a picture on social media of me measuring the door opening, and that was me trying to set the perimeters for what was possible out here on the balcony. I decided I didn't want to have to turn a bonsai tree sideways to get it through the door. So whatever my width was and whatever my height was, we had to be able to take it with us when we go, if we go. So without taking it over to the side. I don't think 4 floors down. You know, I'm an old rigger, so, you know, but come on now, I'm not taking anything 4 floors down over the rail. But this was in on the game almost from the beginning. The center tree came from a bonsai newsletter. I subscribe to a blog, Bonsai Tonight, and there are a couple of times a year when the person who keeps that blog, Jonas, would include a list of trees from his friends or associates from a couple of the clubs, people that have reached out saying I have this tree or that tree, and they would all go on this little list, and then a link would be placed on that right in there amongst the other information. So I clicked on that, and I found this center tree was through that contact, and I reached out to that person and bought that tree. This one and this one came from northern Louisiana, a person who supplies swamp trees. I mean, they'll go through and do pygmy cypress and bald cypress, and I think some other species of trees that you would come to know if you were if you hung out in the wetlands in the south and stuff. I can't remember his name right off the top of my head. I hadn't reached out to him in a couple of years. But those were also nice trees, and they already had their cut. The larger one, and I really love the buttresses on this tree, the larger one had been in California for several years, and I believe when I looked at his social media, I saw several pictures of this tree, and it may have started off with a stump about this high, and for whatever reason, it got cut back to this high. So when I got this tree, it had two little guys like that sticking up, and they were out here, and they were going that way, and they were going that way, and it was cut flat across. So I took a handsaw and cut this wedge, and then wired those leaders up, not those leaders. And then a year or two later, I decided they were too far out. And when this leader came up inside of the old leader, I let it get just tall enough, and then I chopped that little leader. And then last year, I did the same thing to this guy. The leader that was here was out here where my finger is, and I didn't like that ball getting bigger and huger way out here. So when to the base of that leader a little thing shot out, I said, that's in a better location to be the top. And if that lives, because it was like an early spring, I saw that little green. I was pointing to that little green speck and went, that little green speck is ideally located. If that becomes a twig, I'm going to start stealing energy from the leader that we have. I'm going to cut the top of it and then wire that little sprig up. And the little sprig took off, and by midsummer, I had cut enough off of the old leader that sprig was starting to take over. And so that's how we got. And that also means that this leader is going to be slightly smaller diameter because it's like 2 years behind this one. And I remember at the time that wasn't like the reason I did it, but right off the bat I could see where that was advantageous. You know, if you were to look at the tree from that dead on angle, the back wouldn't be eclipsed by the front. You would be able to see them. You should be able to see them both. Right now we are at, let's see, we're starting to get some nice ramification out of these branches. Yeah, you can start to tell we're starting to see this was our first year. This was probably realistically later on in that same year because these guys do so fast. So now all of these are starting to bifurcate off. And the idea with this tree is I when I first got it, I would try to cut it in an arrangement to where it would almost be the silhouette of a finished bonsai every year. And I think I did that the first year. The second year I learned better. The second year I learned that all of that incidental styling comes at the risk of a lot of foliage. You end up with a lot of foliage on the ground. And all of that carnage costs you photosynthesis when we're actually trying to build root mass and build limbs and build all that other stuff. So in that way, styling was not my best friend. Styling was what would have us always kind of trying to decorate something a little ahead of time, while at the same time that decoration is keeping us from being ready later as soon as we could be. So the idea now is to accelerate everything, and the way we're going to accelerate the growth of these trees is, and by accelerate everything, I mean I want this to get as thick as this, and I want this to become round. I would like this to become as thick as this, and I'd like for that to become round. Same here, same here. So when all of those becomes trunk taper, when all of those become proper taper, then we'll be pulling up. Then we'll be pulling up to the docks of being finished. At that time, hopefully, I will have made good choices on our branch structure, and we will have our foundation and our secondary and our tertiary, and all of those guys will be laid out. And any one of these branches that are pointed up too high, I could maybe do a little wedge cut and bring those down. I think okay, I'll say it. I think I've said this every year. I think we're about 3 years away from having these guys where we would like them. I think that would make this about a 7-year project. Also, when I first got these trees, I expected our growth to be more accelerated because of all the fantastic sun we get here in California. But these guys actually love heat. You would see them grow faster, bigger, faster in Mississippi, Alabama, Texas, Arkansas, places where that heat goes up, Louisiana, places where that heat goes up, these guys grow faster. Now, at the same time, when in a bonsai pot, when I get one of those unexpected 90-degree days, these are some of the first things to wilt and complain because their foliage is so light. But if it were like that all the time and they were adapted to it, they thrive in it. When I first got these trees, they were planted up there on the rail. The landlord didn't like that and asked me to take them down. And I started to see if I could maybe negotiate this out or appease him in some way. And then I thought about it and went, it's an earthquake, Pat. It's an earthquake zone. If the building swings, it'll leave that huge pot out there when it swings back. And, I really don't have an answer to that. So just bring it down. But at that time, I also thought that with the pot up there on the rail and my ceiling stopping just short of that, you can see the sunny spot lines up to where that doesn't actually hang over the rail. I would have thought that year one, these tops would be about 12 feet tall. I would have actually expected that. Had I been in, Louisiana or Florida or something like that, and this pot were in a vat of water, I would expect to see those leaders to just skyrocket up and not be really, stay really green, looking really a long time, and just go all summer, making some huge long cane pole looking almost like bamboo. But I find here in California, they are a little bit in this temperate climate. They go well. They grow well. They look pretty. They grow well. They don't. They're easy to maintain, but I don't see that accelerated growth that they're known for in more tropical climates. So that's kind of where I would say I'm at on those. I've never had a problem with my bald cypress. Also, I don't defoliate these guys. I know of people who like to defoliate their trees midsummer around July or something, and then let them put out a second flush. One of my teachers pointed out a long time, out of all the tricks that they do, out of all the tricks that they've seen, one thing that they don't see is a lot of really super old American bonsai. A lot of these trees, when it comes to bald cypress, and he points out, where do the old trees go? What's happening to these old trees? What are we doing to these trees that we think that's fine, that at some point cost us? And I thought about that question, and I don't really have any answers. But one thing I was never sure about was defoliating my bald cypress. I've even heard that people in some circles or some clubs who are crazy about bald cypress and have this little sect of people going with them almost, will have little July 4th defoliate your bald cypress parties. I think it's important to try to always keep these guys in an energy positive. Why am I going on about that? Because a very, very, very close cousin to that is my dawn redwood. And as much as these guys have yet to fail me, I have had about an opposite experience as you can expect to ever get out of that vampire stake you see sticking up out of the weeds in the background. That is my dawn redwood. It is my worst tree. It got heavily styled the first year, and I made a cathedral design out of it. It didn't get heavily styled. It was a formal upright, but I did a fair amount of carving to it, and I wired the teetotal fool out of it. And at one point, we had a couple of issues. I think they might have been powdery mildew that I didn't catch, because the tree looked fine until you touched it and realized that those green fronds were dead but green. It's like they had the liquid sucked out of them and left them color. So the tree looked fine until I touched the frond and the needles fell off, and I was like, wow, that whole thing is gone. And it pushed out a second growth right after that, and we had a heat spell. And that tree has done nothing but mess with me ever since. It's gotten more misshapen. And I was watching a show here recently, and somebody was talking about your worst tree. And they were talking about, if you're going to follow me as your teacher, get rid of your worst tree. Out to the sidewalk, out to that relative or whatever. But you can waste your life trying to elevate something that's fighting you or you can just accentuate and keep moving on with your collection. Bettering your collection was kind of the idea. And while I would say that's a pretty radical idea and not one that I look at a relationship between me and a tree as something that we're doing together, and if it's not going well, I need to better facilitate the tree. Having said that, I am a little sick of this tree's business right now. about the time I was going, "Are you dead?" It finally put out one little. I mean, where are we now? The 20th of April, and the thing had just now shown us a tiniest little speck of green. So, what I would say about the energy of these conifers that can lose their needles in the winter is that don't get super slap happy about how you defoliate and stuff, because its closest cousin is giving me going on 3 years of grief now over a little energy robbing incident that it's continuing to let me know that it's not going to respond well to the things that I'm trying to do. So I end up opting to leave it alone and keep it alive, and the tree gets grosser and worse and more misshapen every year. So that's my little good and bad about our bald cypress and our dawn redwood. These guys have given me. Oh, and I also had a tiny little bald cypress that I managed to mess with enough. It was called Spoon, and I lost it last year through repotting and styling. Okay. Otherwise, I would say if you give these guys plenty of sunshine and you water your bald cypress every day, you will have a bald cypress every day. They are not, if you don't mess with them, they're fine. If you do mess with them the right way, they're fine. I think that means don't go robbing their energy. Oh, there you go. That brings us to our cork bark oak. Early acquisition. I got this tree from right up the road at a bonsai garden that belonged to local bonsai artist Johnny Cedar. It's got a really good base here. We're building foliage. We started off with a twiggy thing that had probably like half the branches. I saw a few yellow leaves, and when I got it home, I realized that it had quite a few dead branches on it. It was there. I bought this during COVID, and so far in the first couple of years, I learned how to not grow or get a cork bark oak to do anything. Since then, I picked up on a few tricks. One, you prune the tips, and then they will definitely vibricate off. Two, you decide where you want the tip to go, this way or this way, and you let that be the direction of the last leaf you left on the branch you just cut, on the limb you just cut, on the twig you just cut. And the bud at the base of that will shoot out a limb in that direction. Three, these trees are drought resistant, and that means water them. In this case, that means water them. If you water the tree a lot, it will push out more growth. And if you feed the tree, it will push out more growth. So, having done those two things, we are starting to see that this guy will push out stuff like nobody's business. And unlike the oak, the coastal oak, which I swear I am not going to prune this year until fall, this guy will probably get a couple of prunings over the summer. We can take our ones and make them twos, our twos and make them threes, our threes and make them, our twos and make them fours, and our fours and make them eights so fast on this guy that it doesn't make sense to me to let it go all year and cut everything back that super long one. Instead, we can cut that stuff off and just cause it to vibricate off more and more and more. 2 or 3 rounds in the course of the summer is not unheard of. And if I played that harder, it might do more. And at the same time, we're feeding and watering this tree. If it were a finished tree, I would probably feed it 1/3 as much, maybe 1/4 as much. And I would probably still water it as much. It's a drought hardy tree, but also it will make decisions on what it keeps and what it gets rid of based on that. So if you like where you're at, I think the idea is, now I haven't had a finished cork bark oak yet, so I might be speaking a little out of turn, but I believe if this were a finished tree, and we're a long way from that we would probably still be pouring the water to this guy, because at first, whenever I heard how drought resistant they were, and I saw the way the tree was dry when I got it, it's like this was a hard, dry matte block. That looked like it almost, what I thought was wood was super hard, dry substrate. And we've had a repotting since then. But yeah, so also do think that guy needs a little bit more room to for its roots. I would like to see a bigger pot. A bigger pot for that guy also causes me space issues. Where would a bigger pot fit in up here? We can do it. I just haven't found the pot, and then once I find the pot, then I'll know how I'm gonna make that work. But we repotted this tree January 6th, 2 years ago. Yeah, 2 years ago, and it is it's not time to repot yet. We can go a minute longer. So I've got a little bit of time to find a pot for this, but I am looking, and I think it needs it. I think it needs to be potted. I might go, I think the tree would also probably look good in a lotus style pot, or maybe just another one of those that is a little bigger. So that's gonna bring us to this huge row of pines here. Last year, we started buying little pine trees and bending them. That's these guys. That guy. But then we also started planting seeds, and that's those guys and those guys. So that's 26. That's another 20 or 30. They're all doing well. Also, if you want to get to know how to grow a tree, grow 30 of them. The easiest thing in the world is to dial something in when you have this many. And also, when one doesn't do well and all the rest of them around it are doing fine, you tend to take that less personally, and that makes it easier to see what's really on you and what isn't. And it also kind of makes it easier to see what the issue is. Like the other day, we started wiring some of these trees, and the first thing I noticed was some of these trees that you see that are up here on the front row that are tiny was because the back row trees were getting tiny and the front row trees were getting taller. So we wired those front row trees and put them on the back row, and then took those tinier trees and put them on the front row, where now they're going to get the same treatment that caused their other ones to outshine them a little. Then next thing we're going to do is grab that next round of 9, which is coming up in our future, and we'll throw some wire to those guys, just like we were a little micro bonsai company. Okay, so those are those. A quick look at our Japanese wisteria. It's hanging out there about mid-summer. All of that foliage will drop, and then at the end of the summer, we may see another round of blooms and another round of foliage. We will probably at least see another round of foliage. And the same with the Chinese wisteria. It's in there. It gave us a lot of really pretty blooms right now. I'm keeping it short, but I'm letting it do all of that stuff it wants to do. The main thing I'm not going to let it do is get up super tall. Other than that, there's a Chinese wisteria sinensis in there in a blue lotus pot that I think is pretty nifty. Okay, next to that is I already spilled the beans earlier. That's 26 seeds that we popped a month ago in the kitchen, and under a fluorescent light, we germinated 36 seeds. We got 26 seeds out of that at last count. I hadn't counted in a couple of days. One more may have snuck up on me, but I don't know. And they're all doing great. I can't say enough about how easy that is. And this time next year, those guys will probably start looking like these guys here. And we'll start wiring all of those and doing stuff to them. All right. That brings us to this tray. This tray here, I call it this tray, is full of substrate so that everything I water in these little trees will roll off in here. And this morning when I watered, or earlier today when I watered, the substrate was pretty damp. And right now it's almost dry, as are the trees that I watered earlier today. This is a ponderosa that we put in one of Elizabeth Crutenden's pots not too long ago, just recently. And it's doing really good. It's looking good. It's doing well. I think it looks beautiful in that pot. I like the angle. I like the work we did. I like the motion that we put in this tree. It responded very well. I don't think that was my best wiring job, but sometimes it works. And I would say if you get the results you want and your wire maybe looks a little like something that you wouldn't have wanted to show off, don't go back over ego and try to straighten that up. I've hurt stuff that way. If it had just been on there a year like it was supposed to and been cut off, it would have been fine. This guy, I did a better job wiring this guy. And Elizabeth did a fantastic job. Please focus. And Elizabeth did a fantastic job of making this pot. And we potted that up about a month ago, I guess. Our little ponderosas look so good in these pots too. In these unglazed pots with the texture, the carving that she does on those. I just think it lends itself so well to these little pondos. And that's another one of her car pots. And this is one of our little, this is one of our Tootsie Rolls, one of our Cheerios. And a year later, it'll get its candles done this year. And yeah, it'll get its candles done this year, Frida. So all of the Japanese black pines that are in bonsai pots, moving on to these guys, they will all get their candles cut. And this is another one of those little, we purchased 10 little seedlings, and then we didn't have them hardly any time. And we started going to town on the wire. We did this, you and me. We did this by wrapping a wire tightly around the trunk of a very soft, pliable little pine tree. And then we would wrap the trunk around a weenie skewer or a chopstick, and then slide the chopstick out and leave those tightly arranged spirals. And then we would bend, fold, and manipulate those spirals to get these shapes. Very rewarding. This is one of Elizabeth's beautiful little pots. And one, look at that little guy. Look at that little pine tree. This little thing has been a bonsai almost as long as it's been a black pine. And you can see that little candle coming up there on the end. In a little while, when we go through and cut that, it'll be harder for me to see that candle because it will have elongated so much it will start to look like the rest of it. But I'll have to go in there and focus really hard, find the little gap between where that little gap in between the new growth and the old growth will get even harder to see there. And I'll just go in there with our scissors and just nip that. And then it will respond. And it will respond by putting out more buds. And we will leave those alone until fall, when all that stuff is hardened off and all of the energy that everybody has for the year has been allocated. Then we go through and select which ones stay and which ones go. This is one we did the other night. Oh, it's in recovery, but it's going to be a good little tree. I'm waiting to see. I want to see some more stuff come out here on this end. Little buds are all up in here. We needed to do a little bit of trim work too. I can cut this back to here because I also have buds here, but I don't want to do that yet because I've also got tiny little buds there. This was our $50 challenge tree. It's a Mame Japanese black pine. Those are the roots right there that got bundled up. And this little guy is a beauty. It's putting forth its candles, and we will do it. I think maybe it's kind of in shadow in there. Maybe we could bring it over here. There you go. There you go. I think it was too far down in the shadows. So that's a little quick run in and look at this was the run. When I ordered 10 trees from Florida, they came 9, and they looked like they were nearly dead. Except this one looked really, really, really green, but it was also the runt. It was the runt. So it's doing okay. It's doing well. In fact, I would say better than okay. And like the others, it'll get its candles done. A little while ago, a few weeks ago, I took 2 of our seedlings. These 2 guys accidentally grew up in the same cup when we planted seeds. And this is technically the first of our seedlings. The very first of our seedlings to get planted. That little pair. So this is our first little repeat look at how they're doing. And they're doing well. This Ponderosa. This is a Yamadori Ponderosa from Deadwood, South Dakota. It's also a Yamadori. It was collected at 5,000 feet, I think. And it's in a windswept style. I really think the world of this tree. I think it's a really pretty tree. It's pushing out a lot of stuff, and it looks pretty happy. I tried something, we started our show. I was talking about a Ponderosa, and I said how this big Ponderosa had gone upstate to a colder part of the country. This tree would have been its sister tree. This would have been its sister tree growing up in a similar neighborhood and would have a similar MO. It's also the same subspecies. Scopularum. I didn't ship this upstate the way I did the other one. What I did with this is I left the door of the freezer open for about 8 hours, and I put this tree at the back of the freezer with the pot and a towel so that it wouldn't just freeze over like a block sitting on the bottom of the frozen refrigerator. So that made it subject to freezing temps, but still good air exchange, and it didn't go down into the teens, it went down into the high 20s, low 30s. So we did that for 4 or 5 nights, and now then we held back to see if the tree looked like it was having any issues, and it did not. So right now we're going into spring, and the tree is doing what it should do, and it looks to me like it's responding well to being watered and fed, which is what we're doing. We water this tree almost every day. It's a ponderosa, which means it would get less water than its Japanese black pine counterpart. However, it's in a small bonsai pot with a lot of rocky mixed to it. It's got a little bit more rocky than my black pine. So it still gets watered about every day because of those adjustments. And so far, so good. I keep an eye on it. I don't want anything to happen to my ponderosas. And also, I don't know if these ponderosas that we bought, these 10, this was a part of that experiment, but I might have blown the experiment. How so, Pat? Well, I may have. I'm not 100% sure that these are the same subspecies that this is, and that is. So that could account for variation. If the two Yamadoris are the species that you would find in Deadwood, South Dakota, and the other species are a different subspecies, possibly. So that's one thing that might. And we're going to wait and see what that means. We're going to wait and see whether that means that they're more hardy in this part of the country, whereas the more Deadwood, South Dakota variety is not, or what? Because I was told that I might not be able to have these when I got a couple, and I looked around and saw others within 20 miles of me that had these and decided to go forward, only to lose 2 right off the bat. Like I had 4 and I lost half of them. And I can pinpoint mistakes, and I can also pinpoint weather anomalies that weren't favorable. But at the same time, I was worried about losing them, and I lost 2. So then that kind of makes me reevaluate. And one thing that I'd figured out is that maybe the ones that I see that are alive around here that have been down here for a while, when other people told me I wouldn't get away with this, maybe the people who told me that were closer to right, and the varieties that I'm seeing weren't the same subspecies. That's what I don't know. That's what I'm still trying to figure out. And to that end, I'll order these ponderosas, and I believe they came from Washington or Oregon. I can't remember which now, but they were super healthy, and they probably weren't the same species that we're talking about when we talk about our ponderosas that came from Deadwood, South Dakota, which are scopulora. Okay, that leaves us this guy. This is my literati Japanese black pine. I purchased this at a club auction, and I love it. It will get its needles done this year. Right now, it seems to be hanging out. It's pretty healthy. Every day when I come out, it's ready to be watered again, so its uptake is good. Its needles are a good color. It's putting out good growth. I did see a little bit of heat damage to this guy, a little speckledy heat damage. I still see that. Sometimes that heat damage stuff is just something that you end up living with until those needles leave the building. So nothing really much to go on there. I did do a slight restyle. When I got this tree, it had a different apex to it. The apex now was one of 2. As that part of the apex is facing us, there was another facing opposite up at about 45 degrees. And it was actually a bar branch. So right where that hooks up, that little junction was only going to get bigger as that top went straight up and then faced back. It was pretty. I looked at it for a year and went, yep, time to go. So that is us. That is a fairly thorough little update on our bonsai trees on our balcony. I would also say that this is one of those times when it's easy to love bonsai. I saw a woolly aphid earlier, but other than that, we're not looking at a lot of issues. Everything is green. Everything is alive. Everything has signaled a willingness to thrive. And I love all the green colors. I love all the girth and the growth that I'm seeing. It's all very rewarding. And when you prune something back and it responds in a way that's favorable, that too is very rewarding. And when you start making things in miniature and begin to see them start working out better than you hoped, it's because it's a living thing and you did stuff right. That's pretty rewarding. Like and subscribe if you guys haven't already. It's Saturday. That can only mean one thing. Tonight we set up and go live. And for Saturday night live bonsai, I have been really enjoying those. And tonight we'll key it up and do it again. I appreciate you, and Frida appreciates you. And thank you so much for watching. Cue the horn.